your wife and daughter know that you're doing this interview?
Yes. My name's Julian. I'm 50 this year, and I'm gay, amongst other things.
When did you first realize you were attracted to men?
I think I might have been probably 9 or 10. I was in an all-boys school, and I obviously looked at the cute ones. And my mom had a subscription to either Her World or Female magazine, and they had these features on national sportsmen. And I think there was one which I liked particularly. It was the swimmers, the national swimmers. And I remember at some point I cut out the pictures and put it in an exercise book. And I used that for material. At the time, it just was. That was just the way it is, you know. I didn't quite think much about it. It only really started to bother me much later in secondary school when I realized, oh, there's this thing called gay, you know. And being in a mission school, that didn't help, because then, you know, from a religious perspective, we were always told, you know, you're wrong, that's wrong, you shouldn't be like that. My first experience with a man was at the old Fort Road beach. For a long time, I had gone there because there was a report in the newspaper about, I think it was the authorities baiting or entrapping gay men. And I had seen that, and I was, oh wow, there's something like that there. So I lived not too far away, and I would ride my bike there on the weekends and kind of ride the trails. And in the trails, you would see evidence of activity. You would see tissue paper, you'd see used condoms, condom wrappers, newspapers kind of laid out, ground sheets. I always went kind of hoping and maybe something would happen. I didn't know what. And I do remember one day, and I saw this guy in hot pink swimming trunks. He looked pretty hot. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I remember back then, when he looked at me, I looked immediately away. I was kind of embarrassed. And then a few hours later, I came out the same way, and I saw the same guy. He was still there. And something clicked. And I thought to myself, you know, if everyone here is gonna stare at me and look at me, I'm gonna do the same thing. So I did this thing where I slammed on the brakes of the bike. And I turned around and I stared at him. And what I didn't know was this was called cruising. That was my first experience ever with a guy. And from that day onwards, I would go to Fort Road almost every weekend. But I would feel an intense sense of guilt every single time. And I would go, maybe I'll meet guys, maybe I wouldn't. I met my wife in Canada. And so my friend in Canada was like, hey, we got some Singaporeans coming, you want to bring them out? And I do remember when I first met the bunch of girls, and her especially, I didn't like her. I thought she was very sassy, very bitchy, and very unnecessary with her comments. But, you know, we spent the next few days skiing together, and I found out that she was very intellectual. She was very smart. She is. You know, she had her own perspectives on things. She had her own desire to do things in whichever way. Very feminist, very feminist, right? And I was very attracted to that, and we became quite good friends. We spent some time writing letters, and I found that I was interested in writing letters to her. And then SMS came about, SMS became very cheap, and then we started chatting. At some point, I thought, you know what, maybe this is my chance of being normal. If we stayed here and I get married to this girl, I could have a chance of being normal. When I realized we had to come back to Singapore, I remember thinking to myself, I'm f***ed because I'm sticky. And almost immediately, I was discovered with a guy. And we had a conversation where, should we annul the marriage or should we continue? And I remember making the decision that I would continue because I had made a promise at the time. And I didn't like to go back on it. And I felt that if I did, it would be very selfish of me because I was the abnormal one and she shouldn't be punished for my abnormality. So we continued. I continued in the marriage, and then we had a child after. And at first, I thought I could handle it. I thought I could bury this, you know. And at first, I thought I could do it. But, you know, the months dragged on to years, and the years dragged on to over a decade. And it took its toll. You know, I thought I could be two persons. I couldn't. Over the years of trying to do that, it just got more and more stressful, of worrying, not for myself, but worrying about them. What would happen to their lives if I was discovered? It didn't work lah. It didn't work. It led me down a path of almost self-destruction, I would say. Depression, suicidal tendencies, you know, all that. I didn't handle it very well at all. I was a very angry person.
Do your wife and daughter know that you're doing this interview?
Yes. I think it was just logical for me to tell them, hey, I'm doing this. And I told them that my fear wasn't quite for me. The gay community has been gossiping about this for years. But my fear now is still for them. But my daughter's old enough. She's very mature. She's been quite wise about this. And she's like, you know, she says, you're still the best daddy ever. And everything between us is status quo. From my wife's perspective is that she doesn't want me to be unhappy for the rest of my life. I got married to my best friend. And over the years, our relationship has changed. But that love for each other has grown. The relationship has grown. We're still a family. My family is still a priority. I'm still planning for her retirement and her education. That doesn't go away.
When you look at how the LGBTQ plus community is much more visible and accepted now, do you feel envious?
Envious? I wouldn't say I'm quite envious in a way. But from my perspective, they've certainly had it easier.
Do you ever wish that you had been born in a later generation?
No. I would think that I wish there was somebody who had told me it's okay to be you and there's nothing to fear.
How do you feel about Singapore's progress regarding LGBT rights?
Oh, we've gone very far. We have gone tremendously far. I never ever would have thought that 377A would be repealed. You do this.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
No, that's it.